Eli Turner didn't care about legacy. Not trophies, not titles, not the whispers that now followed him through campus halls like a ghost of triumph. He returned from the symposium the same way he'd left. Hoodie up, head down, notebook under one arm. But what he didn't realize was that sometimes the world doesn't wait for permission to notice you. It started with a whisper, a rumor drifting through the upper echelons of academia. A freshman who had dismantled a problem meant to humble PhD candidates. A name that had bypassed standard hierarchies and earned its place not through connections, but raw precision. By the end of the week, his inbox looked different. There were emails from think tanks, from internships he never applied to, from professors he'd never met. But only one message made him stop mid-step on the cold stone path between the mathematics and physics buildings. Subject: Immediate Opportunity, Quantum Horizons Program. From Office of Theoretical Advancement, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He opened it standing up, fingers cold around his phone. Each word hit harder than the last. We have been following your recent achievements with great interest, particularly your performance at the Collegiate Mathematics Symposium. Based on your demonstrated capabilities, we are extending a conditional invitation to the Quantum Horizons Winter Cycle. His breath caught. Eli knew the name. Everyone in STEM did. Quantum Horizons wasn't a program. It was an orbit, an elite invitation-only initiative for young minds on the edge of genius. Past participants had gone on to lead breakthroughs in quantum computing, space-time engineering, predictive AI. It was myth wrapped in reality. There was no application. There was only selection. And now they had chosen him. But the message continued. Participants must present a novel theoretical framework or original model with demonstrable potential for future research or innovation. This proposal must be submitted in full within 14 days of this notice. No extensions. Eli reread the paragraph 3 times. His thumb hovered over the screen, not scrolling, just holding the moment still. No extensions, no second chances. Jay found him in the cafeteria 10 minutes later, food tray in hand, already mid-sentence before realizing something was off. "Hey, I was thinking, yo, dude, you good?" Eli slid his phone across the table. Jay picked it up, scanned the email, then whistled low. "No way. Quantum Horizons. Are you serious? This is NASA level, MIT level, science fiction level." Eli nodded once, quiet. Jay looked at him, expression shifting from excitement to something heavier. "They want a new idea?" "Original theory," Eli said. "Applied math or predictive systems. Something they haven't seen before." 2 weeks? That's suicide, man." Eli didn't reply. His mind was already somewhere else. That night he didn't sleep. He sat at his usual table in the far corner of the library, under the flickering light, the rest of the room abandoned to midnight silence. His trophy from the symposium, still tucked away in his backpack, remained untouched. This wasn't about the past. It was about what came next. He stared at the blank page in his notebook. Not afraid, just uncertain. For the first time in a long time, he had no clear path forward, no fixed solution waiting just beneath the surface. Because this wasn't just a problem, it was a question. What do you believe in enough to build from scratch? He started scribbling, not solutions, not equations, just words. Entropy, prediction, structure from noise, behavioral collapse, chaotic harmony, the math of instinct. He paused on that last phrase, tapped the pencil twice. The math of instinct. A thought sparked, small, fragile. What if instinct, human intuition, could be modeled? What if emotion and behavior could be represented as a complex system of variables and change? What if he could build a predictive framework for human decision-making? Not deterministic, but probabilistic. Not static, but responsive. His fingers twitched. He pulled out a fresh page. This wasn't just an idea, it was a seed, and it had 2 weeks to grow into something that could change everything. 3 days in, Eli Turner hadn't left the library. Not really. He'd go back to his dorm to shower, maybe nap for 30 minutes at a time. But his real home had become a rectangle of light at the far end of the second floor, a fortress of whiteboards, notebooks, and silence. By the third night, even the janitors stopped asking questions. His theory was taking shape, but like all complex systems, it didn't grow in straight lines. It spiraled. It doubled back on itself. Sometimes it bloomed, sometimes it collapsed. He called it intuitional mapping. The core idea was this: even the most irrational human choices follow patterns, micro-patterns, the kind too fast, too fluid for traditional models to see. But what if you treated decision-making like weather systems? Something that could be predicted, not precisely but probabilistically, using fractal logic and behavioral triggers. It wasn't perfect, but it was possible. And Eli was obsessed. He mapped case studies, scraped real-world data, modeled game theory outcomes, wove in nonlinear feedback loops. He referenced everything from neuroscience papers to crowd dynamics in urban planning. He barely ate, barely spoke. Jay tried to drag him out on night 4. "Bro, you need sleep, water, a single vegetable." Eli didn't look up. "I'm close." Jay sighed, tossed a banana next to the graph-littered notebook, and left without another word. It wasn't that Eli thought he was smarter than anyone. It was that this mattered. Every part of him remembered what it felt like to be invisible, to be passed over, underestimated, sidelined. And now he had a chance to build something that might change how intelligence was seen, understood, respected. Not just IQ points, but perception, pattern, possibility. By day 6, the theory had a structure: 3 modules, 12 variables, and a framework that blended behavioral economics with chaos theory. He built a simulation model on his battered laptop. It worked, kind of. It predicted decision curves within a 76% confidence range. Not perfect, but groundbreaking. He sent it to a graduate student he trusted in the behavioral sciences department. 4 hours later, the guy called him. "Eli, where the hell did this come from?" "Just something I've been working on." "This is crazy. You're telling me this model ran those outcomes without individual tuning?" "Yes." There was a long pause. "I don't know what they're looking for at Quantum Horizons," the grad student said. "But if this isn't it, then the world's officially broken." Eli hung up, quietly energized. He still had a problem, though. The model was complex, abstract. It needed a case, something elegant, dramatic, that could show exactly how the system functioned in real time. He needed a narrative. It came to him that night. He remembered the symposium, specifically the moment he found the shortcut. He hadn't calculated it, he'd felt it, like music in the math. That was instinct. That was what his model needed to explain. He began recreating that moment, breaking down every step, every mental pivot, from when the final equation first hit the screen to when he boxed the answer. And it clicked. The model didn't just predict external behavior. It mirrored the internal cognitive sequence of intuitive breakthroughs, micro moments of shift, mental weight placed on certain possibilities, neural priority firing. The system wasn't just a simulation, it was a map of genius. He ran the model through again, this time using his own decision path at the symposium as the data set. Result: 91.2% predictive accuracy. Eli blinked. then backed away from the screen, stunned. He had just modeled intuition. The first person Eli told wasn't Jay. It was Professor Caldwell. Not because he wanted approval, but because he wanted challenge. She had been the wall he once had to scale. Now, she was something else entirely, a mirror, brutal, honest, impossible to impress unless you earned it. He walked into her office just after sunrise. She hadn't even taken off her coat. She looked up, startled. "Turner." "I need 15 minutes, Eli said. "No ego, just your mind." She raised an eyebrow, closed the file she was reading, and gestured to the chair. "I'm listening." Eli opened his notebook. No preamble, no fluff, just the work. He laid out the theory, intuitional mapping, probabilistic logic frames, feedback-weighted behaviors. He showed her the structure, the predictions, the error margins. Then, the case study. Her eyes flicked across the simulation output. Her fingers stopped tapping. Then, her voice. "You're modeling intuition?" "Mapping it. Probabilistically. I'm not claiming determinism, but patterns? Yes." He flipped to the next page. "This is my own case path from the symposium finals. The system predicted my shift sequence with over 90% accuracy." Caldwell leaned forward, scanning the math with the kind of silence that made Eli's pulse quicken. After a long pause, she looked up. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" "A behavioral science graduate student. He validated the logic, but no one else." She leaned back, eyes distant now, not skeptical, calculating. "I've seen thousands of students pitch ideas," she said finally. "Most confuse ambition with impact. They chase the complex because it looks impressive. But this," she gestured to the notebook, "this is elegant, dangerous, but elegant." Eli didn't flinch. "Dangerous how?" "You're stepping into territory with implications far beyond math. Decision prediction models can be applied everywhere. Marketing, politics, warfare. You're not just predicting outcomes, you're shaping them." He nodded once. He'd already thought about that. Caldwell stood and walked to the window, arms folded. "Do you want my advice?" "Yes." "Then stop treating this like a student project. Stop asking for permission. This is your statement. If you're submitting it to Quantum Horizons, then submit it like someone who knows what it is." He waited. "And what it is," she added, "is a theoretical weapon." Eli swallowed. "Will they accept it?" "If they don't," she said, turning to him, "it's because they're afraid of it." She walked to her desk, grabbed a sealed folder, and handed it to him. "What's this?" "A letter of recommendation. I wrote it the night you won the symposium. I didn't know what you'd do next, but I knew you weren't done." Eli opened it slowly. The first line hit him harder than anything she had ever said aloud. "Eli Turner is not merely a gifted student. He is the future edge of thought." He closed the folder, quiet. "Thank you." Caldwell nodded once, then added, with that faint Caldwell edge, "Don't embarrass me." That night, Eli finalized his submission to Quantum Horizons. The theory, the framework, the predictive models. He created a clean digital simulation, a 10-minute narrated walkthrough, and one final page. Case study, The Unseen Shift, a reverse analysis of intuitive breakthrough. He clicked send at 2:13 a.m., then leaned back in the chair, heart racing, not from nerves but from possibility. He had done it. Not just written a paper, not just solved a problem. He had built a model of something people had always treated as unquantifiable, and whether the world was ready or not, it was real. For 3 days, nothing happened. No emails, no calls, just silence. Eli told himself not to care. He buried himself in textbooks, simulations, even other people's homework just to stay distracted. But even as he solved complex integrals, his mind kept looping back to one question. Did they understand what he gave them? On the fourth day, the call came. It wasn't from a random administrator. It was from Dr. Ilana Gregoire, head of applied theory at MIT, founding architect of the Quantum Horizons program, and one of the most feared intellects in predictive systems. When her name popped up on the screen, Eli didn't breathe. He answered with one word. "Hello." Her voice was exact, polished, like glass. "Mr. Turner, this is Dr. Gregoire. Do you have 5 minutes?" "Yes," he said, standing automatically in the middle of his dorm room. "We've reviewed your submission 3 times. I've seen many models in my life. Yours is the first I had to feel my way through." "That's rare." Eli said nothing. "You're not just modeling behavior, Eli. You're hinting at cognitive rhythm, the tempo of decision-making. That's an uncharted field. Unsettling, to be honest." Still, Eli stayed quiet. "We had 2 options, deny the risk or embrace it." She paused, then added sharply, "Welcome to Quantum Horizons." Eli closed his eyes. It wasn't joy. It was something deeper, like gravity shifting beneath his feet. A confirmation, not just of his theory, but of everything he knew, quietly, all along. That his mind belonged in rooms like this. Not because of validation, but because of clarity. Dr. Gregoire continued. "You'll fly to Cambridge next Friday. Orientation is closed door. You'll be presenting to a panel of our resident faculty. 1 hour, no slides, just you, a board, and your theory." "No slides? Ideas this big," she said, "need to stand without projection." And then, just before hanging up, "Prepare yourself. This isn't just an opportunity, it's pressure at a different frequency." The line went dead. By the next morning, the news had leaked. Jay found out before Eli even told him. He burst into their usual study spot holding 2 coffees and a look of exaggerated betrayal. "You got into Quantum Horizons and didn't tell me." "I didn't tell anyone." "That's worse." Jay plopped into the seat across from him and pulled out his phone. "They already posted the list. 12 names from around the world. You're dead center. Dude, people on Reddit are already calling you the Quiet Architect." Eli groaned. "That's worse than the Michigan Mind." Jay grinned. "You're officially a brand now." But beneath the teasing, Eli felt something heavier. Not fear, not even nerves, just readiness. For the first time in his life, he wasn't being underestimated, he was being expected. In the week that followed, Eli trained like an athlete. Not with dumbbells, but with whiteboards. Timed lectures, cold defenses. He stood in front of Caldwell 4 times and let her shred him each round. "You're rambling here. This jump in logic will lose half the room. You need to show the human cost, not just the numbers." And finally, "Now, that's how you earn a room's silence." The night before his flight, Jay dropped by with snacks, a hoodie, and a message scribbled on a Post-it. "You're not just the math, you're the meaning behind it." Eli packed it in his notebook. Just before midnight, Professor Caldwell stopped him outside the library. "Cambridge is afire. Stay centered." "I will." She paused. Then, more quietly, "And Eli, you're not representing just the school anymore." Eli nodded once. He understood. He was representing the future of a different kind of brilliance. The door was unmarked. Just polished wood, set into a corridor of glass and silence. No grand title, no brass plate. Just a quiet gravity that said, "Only enter if you belong." Eli stood in front of it for a second longer than he meant to. Not from hesitation. From recognition. This was the room that would either crown his theory or dissect it until there was nothing left. He pushed the door open. Inside, a circular chamber, sleek and surgical. A single whiteboard at the center. A long, half-moon table facing him, with 6 chairs already filled. One by one, the legends introduced themselves. Dr. Ilana Gregoire, Applied Systems Theory. Dr. Youssef Khan, Neural Pattern Modeling. Dr. Sophia Matsuda, Behavioral Economics and Game Theory. Dr. Reyes, mathematician, MIT Media Lab, and 2 others from CERN and DeepMind. Each name was a published storm. Eli nodded to each, calm, still. He wore his usual hoodie, but his hands were steady. No notes, just the model inside his mind. Gregoire was first to speak. You'll have 1 uninterrupted hour, then questions. Begin when ready. Eli walked to the board, picked up the marker, and for a moment, he didn't write. He just looked at them, not with defiance, but with intention. Then he began. He didn't open with jargon. He didn't hide behind math. He started with a question. What if instinct is just information, moving faster than we know how to measure? That made 2 heads tilt. 1 eyebrow raise. He continued. What if intuition, the gut feeling, the leap of logic, the spark in the dark, isn't magic or mystery and but pattern? Not visible in isolation, but when layered, when weighted, when framed, predictable. He turned and wrote 3 words on the board. Trigger, pressure, pattern. Every decision begins here, he said. The conscious ones, the reflexive ones, even the ones that surprise us. He explained how his model, intuitional mapping, tracked micro-patterns of behavior under duress, how it used a feedback-weighted loop to account for shifting cognitive priorities, how it treated human intuition like a chaotic function, not linear, but not random either. He moved with precision, his voice low, but filled with clarity. Every line he wrote revealed another layer. Each equation not just a formula, but a story of why people do what they do when it matters most. He demonstrated how the model handled real data, a social collapse scenario, a market panic, a soldier's decision in a 0-second window. He didn't show graphs, he showed moments, and how math could finally explain them. By minute 42, the room had shifted. Gregoire wasn't blinking. Matsuda was taking notes. Reyes was leaning forward, hands clasped tight. At minute 53, Eli paused, turned back to the board. I used to think intuition was a gift, he said. Now I think it's a system, one we've just never dared to map. He boxed the final equation, stepped back, and for the first time he smiled, barely. Then silence, but not the kind that means confusion, the kind that means something just changed. The questions came fast. What about margin of error under overlapping variables? How do you differentiate cognitive noise from actual behavioral signal? Have you tested this against predictive AI systems? Eli answered all of it, not flawlessly, but fluently. He didn't pretend to know everything, but he knew what he built. And more than that, he knew why he built it. Gregoire closed her folder. You understand what this model could do in the wrong hands? Yes. And you're still building it? Yes, he said, because the only thing worse than building it is letting someone else do it first without the ethics in place. For a moment, her lips curled, half approval, half warning. You're dangerous, she said. Eli met her eyes. Number, I'm prepared. The panel fell quiet again. Then Dr. Khan leaned back, let out a breath, and said, Well, damn. Outside the boardroom, the hallway was colder than he remembered. Eli leaned against the wall, eyes closed, heart pounding, now that it was over. He didn't know if they'd accept him. But he knew this. they'd remember him. And in the world of intellect, sometimes memory was the first form of power. The acceptance wasn't an email this time. It was a hand-delivered envelope, thick, sealed with the gold insignia of MIT's Office of Theoretical Advancement. A courier arrived at Eli's dorm at 6:47 a.m. No note, no words, just the envelope and a nod. Inside, a formal letter. But it wasn't the text that stopped him. It was the signature at the bottom. Dr. Ilana Gregoire. Welcome to the horizon. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Housing was arranged in a secured wing of the MIT graduate complex, nicknamed the Think Tank, by the few who had ever been allowed to visit. Each room came with floor-to-ceiling whiteboards, noise-canceling insulation, and a private data hub. Eli's new world didn't move fast, it moved deep. Every floor was a maze of minds. One hallway had researchers modeling quantum entanglement in neural pathways. Another debated sentient algorithms over vending machine coffee. Conversations didn't happen in small talk. They happened in theoretical language. On day 2, Eli entered the shared research atrium and paused. It was the first time he'd seen them all gathered, the other 11 Horizon scholars. One was already building a nonlinear crypto protocol based on coral reef structures. Another had trained an AI to dream in alternate physics. No one looked up when he walked in, not out of rudeness, out of focus. He wasn't special here, and somehow, that made him feel more powerful. Jay texted that night. "What's it like?" Eli replied. "Like sitting in a room full of thunderstorms." Each week came with a challenge, not a class, not an assignment, a challenge. Week 1. Design a model that identifies future conflict points in global resource allocation using only 5 variables. Week 2. Create a theoretical system that maps attention, not content, across digital ecosystems in real time. Week 3. Break your own model. That last one hit hardest, because that was when Eli realized brilliance wasn't just about building. It was about breaking, about knowing when your idea needed to be shattered in order to become stronger. So he turned inward, rebuilt his intuitional mapping theory from the ground up, added error tolerance modifiers, replaced static pathways with adaptive curves, and introduced a concept he hadn't dared touch before: emotional variability, indexing. It turned the model from something predictive into something alive. He ran it past Gregoire late one night, expecting a critique. What he got was something else. She stared at the simulation, then said softly, "This could rewrite decision science." Eli didn't answer, because deep down he already knew. But progress came at a price. There were days when Eli didn't speak to anyone outside the lab, nights when he dreamed in symbols and woke up disoriented. He started to forget what day of the week it was. Meals became interruptions. Time lost its rhythm. Then, on the 33rd day of the program, it happened. They brought in a guest evaluator, not a scientist, not a theorist, a general. U.S. Department of Strategic Futures. She listened to every presentation, silent, impenetrable, until Eli's. He didn't soften his theory. He didn't redact the parts that touched on real-world manipulation or predictive control. He laid it out, clean, honest, whole. When he finished, the general leaned forward and said, "Can this be weaponized?" Eli paused. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he knew too well. "Yes," he said, "if someone ignores the ethics I've embedded." The general nodded once, said nothing more. After she left, Gregoire pulled him aside. "You handled that well." Eli looked her in the eye. "I built this to reveal patterns, not to control people." "I know," she said, then added, "That's why you're still here." By the end of the cycle, Eli wasn't just a participant. He was a pillar. The quiet freshman who once sat unnoticed in a back row lecture now stood shoulder to shoulder with minds reshaping the world. Not louder, not flashier, just undeniable. And as the quantum horizon cycle drew to a close, Dr. Gregoire gathered the 12 scholars for a final conversation. "You were chosen because you already changed the conversation," she said. "But what matters now is how you use that voice." She turned to Eli. "For some of you," she said, "it will be about being heard. For others," her eyes stayed locked on his, "it will be about knowing when to speak." He nodded. Because Eli Turner understood something most people didn't. Sometimes the most powerful thing a mind can do is wait in silence until the world is finally ready to listen. Eli Turner returned to Michigan in winter, not because he had to, because he chose to. Snow coated the old math building like powdered silence. Students rushed past, bundled in thick coats, oblivious to the legacy walking beside them. The same kid in the same hoodie, same slow stride, same quiet eyes. But everything had changed. He slipped into the back of Caldwell's lecture hall 10 minutes early, just like before. The room was half full, buzzing with chatter. No one noticed him at first, until someone did. A girl in the third row turned, nudged her friend. The whispers spread like ink in water. By the time Caldwell entered, 5 heads had already turned. When she spotted him, she didn't blink, just offered the faintest nod before setting her bag down. "Today's topic," she said, "is less about solutions, more about systems, and how understanding the structure behind the problem is sometimes more important than solving it." She paused, just long enough to let the words land. Eli didn't smile, but he felt it. He didn't stay for the full lecture. Instead, he walked to the library, the same corner table. Same scratch marks on the desk, same uneven light. But this time, something waited for him. An envelope. Handwritten, no name, just 4 words. For when it matters. Inside, a faculty invitation. Guest lecturer. Systems of Intuition. Spring session. A blank space followed the title, waiting for his input. And beneath that, in Professor Caldwell's handwriting, "You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be ready when they finally ask the right question." Later that evening, Jay found him in their old dorm stairwell, sipping vending machine coffee like nothing had happened. "So?" Jay asked. Eli passed him the letter. Jay scanned it once, then again. "Dude," he looked up, wide-eyed, "you're going to teach?" "Just 1 module." "But still, you went from that quiet freshman to this in under a year." Eli didn't respond right away. Then, maybe that's the point. Jay leaned against the railing. "I heard MIT offered you a full research grant." "They did." "And you turned it down?" "Paused it." Jay blinked. "Why?" Eli stared out the window. Snow swirled against the glass like equations in freefall. "Because brilliance shouldn't leave behind the places that never expected it." That spring, the lecture hall filled to standing room only. Students who had once passed him without a glance now came early. Some brought notebooks. Others just brought curiosity. When Eli stepped to the podium, he didn't clear his throat, didn't wait for silence. He just spoke. Calm, steady, intentional. He told them about patterns buried in chaos, about the rhythm of human decisions, about the math of moments no one thought could be measured. But more than that, he told them this: "You don't need permission to be brilliant. You don't need the spotlight to matter, and you don't have to shout to shift the system." At the end of the lecture, a student raised her hand. "You said intuition can be mapped. But how do you know when to trust it, when everyone else tells you you're wrong? Eli paused, then answered softly, when your silence still echoes louder than their doubt. Years later, his model would become a cornerstone of behavioral AI. His lectures would be referenced across disciplines, from economics to emergency response strategy. And yes, his name would appear in textbooks, cited with phrases like Turner equilibrium and the pattern of instinct. But ask anyone who knew him back at Michigan, and they'd tell you the same thing. He never chased legacy. He built it quietly. One chalk line, one breakthrough, one unspoken shift at a time. Because in a world built to reward noise, Eli Turner proved that silence, when earned, speaks louder than anything.